Spokane Valley could become a sanctuary city of a different
Councilman
kind.
Caleb Collier says that this
I'm proposing that the city of Spokane Valley issue a proclamation stating that our city is a Second Amendment sanctuary city.
Welcome to the fire.
Today on Church and State, we'll be covering the CCP as well as the illegal and atrocious organ harvesting with Jan Jakielek and Steve Lance. Hello, Christian Patriots, and welcome to Church and State, where we drive morality and religion over tolerance and apathy. And I'm your host, Caleb Collier, once again, your favorite far-right shock jock, and the show that talks about politics and religion. Jesus Christ is our referee, so it's always nice and clean. I almost forgot the word favorite. You see that?
That was epic.
Epic. I had like this glitch, like short glitch. And I'm like, no, I am the favorite. I am their favorite far-right shock jock.
Did the Neuralink freeze up on you?
I guess so. I don't use Neuralink. I have a hole drilled in my head. Man, Chris, you and your jokes. Anyway, go on over to churchandstate.media. You're going to want to fill out this form for us so you can get our newsletter where we're sending a lot of information to you and a lot of links to our shows. And I tell you all the time that censorship is real, that a lot of times through YouTube, Facebook, all these different platforms, that you probably aren't necessarily seeing our shows that we're producing 5 days a week. So get on our newsletter list. And of course, I'll personally call you as well. And not a lot of hosts do that, but this is my commitment. And I don't care actually how big I get. I'm going to continue to try to do this. That's going to be, if we really made it big, Chris, that'd be really hard to do. But I really want to try to do that.
We'd have to get like an AI with your voice.
No, Chris.
Copied.
Chris, you're just full of bad ideas on today's episode.
Send it a signal with your Neuralink.
Wow. I think Chris needs a re-education camp. It'll be fun, Chris. While you're on the website, also check out the most recent episodes where we cover hard-hitting topics, bring in amazing guests, and you're going to want to check all those out and share them with friends, family, and neighbors. That's a big ask as well. Like, if you like the episode, send it to a few friends. Like, hey, you got to check this guy out. He's crazy. He's talking about whatever he wants. Please, do it. Also, check out the featured guests. We've been joined by some incredible people over the years, and you're going to want to check all of them out. You go to the featured guest page, hit on their name, and it takes you right to the interview. Also, do some shopping. It's great. It's fun. All right? A little bit of shopping. Just a little bit. I'm not trying to get anybody in debt here. But we got some great companies that support us that are on the freedom, liberty, Christian side of things. And I want you to check out all of them. It's great products. All of them use that promo code Church and State. Many, you get a discount, but all of them help support us. And speaking of support, hit the donate button for us. This is so vital to us to continue to be on Prepper Broadcasting Network, NRBTV, newscasters, your news, Faith and Freedom. I always want to say Faith and Family, but Faith and Freedom Television. Great stuff. And national syndication starting in August. It's important stuff. And with every one of you, if you just put in a little bit amount of money. Chris, do you always put 1776 in there? Is that what you do?
I do that sometimes, yeah.
What else do you do? 1984?
I don't have that one.
Oh, maybe you should.
I might add that.
If you really want to battle tyranny. 1984. But no, I'm not asking for $1,984. I'm asking for $5, $10, $20, whatever you can do. It really does help us stay on the air and continue to come at you 5 days a week. Lastly, if you want to get a hold of us, Church and State 1776 at proton.me. With that, here is another episode coming from Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. Had the opportunity to sit down with Jan and Steve and talk about the Communist Chinese Party, which is a very, very important issue that I wish more Americans were paying attention to. These guys are not our friends, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, they're not practicing free market capitalism. They have their own version. It's crony. It's communism. It's state-controlled. And perhaps the most atrocious and awful thing that we discussed with both of these gentlemen was the organ harvesting that they're doing with religious minorities like Christians, Muslims, Falun Gong. In this case, they were both talking about that. But there are elites throughout the world that if they decide that they need a new organ, or the doctor decides that, or perhaps I should say God decides that, Many of them are going to China, and within 2 weeks, they're able to have an organ. When you consider what happens in the United States, where oftentimes you're on a 2-year wait list, how are they doing that? How are they bypassing that? Because they're taking these so-called criminals, enemies of the communist Chinese state, and they're using them for their organs. So please pay attention to what we're talking about on today's episode. With that, go ahead, Chris.
Hey, this is Caleb Collier with Church and State over at Freedom Fest, and I'm joined by Jakielek. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Excellent. All right, and we're going to be talking about your book, Kill to Order, about China's organ harvesting. This is a big subject, and unfortunately, far too few Americans are paying any attention to it.
This is the cover of the book. So it's kind of insane. The Chinese Communist Party is killing people at scale for their organs, and they were telling people for years that it was death row prisoners that they were using, but actually they are using prisoners of conscience, innocent people who have been incarcerated because of their belief, or in some cases because of their identity. It kind of shifted as no one really did anything for the better part of 15 years. But this is like something, it's a whole next level compared to your garden variety, also frankly horrible organ trafficking that happens with cartels. This is like what I would call next level kill to order forced organ harvesting.
That's absolutely wild and despicable. And this isn't just one specific religious group, correct? Can you go into this? Because I know they're targeting Christians, Muslims, a lot of different faiths. Anyone really that's not worshiping the state as the Communist Chinese Party wants.
Well, let me, if I could sort of frame out for you kind of how it works, because absolutely, this is something like atrocities, when they're not held in check, when no one holds people account, they spread. But so let me just kind of frame out for you how it started, right? And then I can answer your question more completely, sure. Right? But basically, so let's talk about how it works in an ethical transplantation system. In an ethical transplantation system, say I need a new heart, okay? Someone has to have a catastrophic accident in this country, right? Usually it's a car or motorcycle accident. And an ethics team has to decide that this person is actually dead, because sometimes you can harvest from someone that's not dead, and you obviously don't want to do that, right? But the death has to be very specific, because there has to be a bit of circulation in the body still. The moment that all circulation is done, the organs degrade very quickly, so they're not really suitable for transplantation, for a heart anyway.
Sure.
So all of that happens, plus our bodies reject foreign objects. So we actually control for blood type and tissue type. That's actually how we prevent rejection or reduce rejection, in addition to using these anti-rejection drugs. And there's also size. You can't transplant a giant heart into a small person. So that's all. My point is, it's very rare. There's a sudden accident happens. There's this person that appears that's a donor, and there's a field of people that want to get that organ, and there's an algorithm of sorts that determines who gets to the front of the line based on how difficult. Anyway, so there, all these things, right, have to factor in. The supply is a lot less than the demand, okay? So now, going back to China, I have to kind of frame out a couple of pieces of context here, okay? One is, in China, they have this long history of creating class enemies, okay? Black classes, they call them. So landowners are a great example. That was right at the beginning, 1949, the revolution happens, and they're like, we don't believe in private property. Actually, we're gonna take the private property, right? So how do they do that? These people, there's millions of people that have private property. They're not just going to give it away. They've worked for it, right?
Yep.
And they have friends, and those people won't be happy either. Well, so this is what they did. In communist societies, they always seize control of the methods of information dissemination. Okay, so they turn them into propaganda organs, and they push mass dehumanizing propaganda through the population, and then they convince some portion of the population and kind of program or condition another much larger portion of the population to basically allow for terrible things to happen to the group of people that's being targeted. They say these people are evil, that they took your land, so you deserve to take it back, that they're dangerous, you should hold them in contempt, they're beneath you, all these things, right? And that activates a quirk in our psychology, which we treat these people differently. It's horrible, but every totalitarian regime uses this one neat trick. And
they typically target the youth for that.
Absolutely. So like this is an example, like most people just kind of get conditioned and start treating these people as different, and just they're like more sort of tolerant of bad things being done. But some people go insane, like the Red Guard during the Culture Revolution, right? They actually went all in and started, killing people in struggle sessions and so forth as part of the sort of mania that resulted from the mass propaganda. Okay. There's been many of these class enemies that the Chinese Communist Party has created over the years. In 1999, the newest group became Falun Gong practitioners. And this is actually, it's very important to understand. It's a very unusual group. You could think of it like a traditional Chinese yoga, okay? Also based on core principles, truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. And people would live these teachings, voluminous teachings written by a man named Li Hongzhi. And not a lot of rules in here, but the rules would be things like there's no enriching yourself from the practice. There's no hierarchy in the practice. There's no worship, okay? There's no roster. You don't even join anything. It's like living the teachings is what makes you a practitioner. And when you add all this up, it was unusually grassroots in a society which is communist, which is, I like to call it obscenely hierarchical. Everything kind of comes from the top, right? And so when they black classed the Falun Gong, there had been 70 to 100 million people doing this, okay, in this very grassroots fashion shared by word of mouth. The government, the dictator at the time said, we're going to eradicate this. That didn't mean kill everybody. That meant put them into struggle sessions, okay, make them a black class. Now, you can get out of it sometimes as a black class, right? You can say, well, for example, as a landowner, you say, thank you, great Communist Party, for emancipating me from my wrong thought. I thought owning land was a good thing. Now I understand it's evil. Now I understand. Thank you for your support and helping me. If you did all this kind of crazy stuff, you could live maybe, because now you've basically shown your compliance, okay, or obsequiousness or whatever. The Falun Gong became kind of the first group that really didn't do it. They said, no, we're not evil. I mean, the propaganda they pushed was really intense, right? The regime push. So and sometimes, you see these yellow shirt wearing people at like capitals of different states or in Washington, D.C. They'll giving out flyers explaining about the persecution of Falun Gong. Often it'll say on the shirt, Falun Dafa is good, or Falun Gong is good. That's the response of the Falun Gong practitioners. Actually, we're not evil. We're good, right? It almost became a slogan. And the regime didn't know how to deal with this because they'd never seen the level of resistance of a black class. So they incarcerated like 1 million people, maybe 2. We don't know. We don't actually know the real number. Hundreds of thousands, let's say. Okay, and this is what sets up this kill to order situation. Okay, because they took this group of people that's been dehumanized massively, and then they incarcerate a massive number of them, and now they start blood typing, tissue typing, and organ scanning these people in advance. So now, as a wealthy transplant tourist, I got my 100 or 200 grand, I put my money down, the transaction goes through, and the donor, really it's an innocent prisoner of conscience, not a real donor, is ready to be killed to order, is shipped and killed to order so that I can live. Okay, it's the exact reverse. Okay, it's the exact reverse of an ethical system. One recipient appears and this whole field of donors ready to be used as like an unwilling organ bank. And now to answer your question, right? So they built this on the back of Falun Gong, 15 years or so. The world didn't really respond meaningfully. And they added a second group, the Uyghur Muslims, up in the northwest of China, very isolated geographically. They run the whole area as a police state. They dehumanized them. They incarcerated perhaps 1 million of them or more. And then because it's run like a police state, that actually allowed them to start blood typing and tissue typing people in their homes. So a significant portion of that entire population up there has been basically set up into this organ bank situation. And that's the problem with atrocities. They spread. So it isn't just Falun Gong practitioners. It was probably been predominantly Falun Gong practitioners. The Uyghurs in recent years, I think the uniquely vulnerable group have been added at significant scale, and possibly other groups that are, we've heard some about Tibetans, we've heard some about Christians, but I don't know the details. One thing I do know is that there's the dehumanizing rhetoric that they used against the Falun Gong, that they used against the Uyghurs, that's in a significant uptick against Christians right now in China. And I talked with my friend Bob Fu over at China Aid about this, and he agrees that this is happening. So that's very concerning to me. because that dehumanizing propaganda always precedes atrocity.
Sure. One of the things that I always keep my eye on is dystopian films, because Hollywood likes to use predictive programming on us. And as you were talking about that, I'm sure you're familiar with the movie The Island.
I'm very familiar. In fact, I think I talked about this at Freedom Fest yesterday. I mentioned The Island, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
that's literally what it is. It's happening in real life, and nobody seems to care at all.
In fact, the Island film came out 1 year before I kind of got hit over the head with the evidence. I'd heard rumors that this was happening. I think The Island came out 2005. We kind of got the evidence in 2006. One of the whistleblowers, right, was an Israeli transplant surgeon. His patient told him one day, I've got it set up. I've got my heart transplant set up in China in 2 weeks. And Jakob said, that's impossible. How can you schedule a heart transplant? You have to know when someone's going to have a catastrophic accident. There's no ethical scenario for that, right? But the guy went and got his heart, right? And that was one of the things that convinced me that this is real, that there's something that's happening.
Sure.
At scale, that you need to have this living organ bank. See, it's not like with cartel situations. I've researched this a bit too. It's kind of like any organ into any body. Like they don't, because there's really no recourse. Like, you can't really go to complain to the cartel that things went wrong, right?
You lose your head real quick.
But here, right, it's actually the Chinese super elites. They are the prime beneficiaries of this system. Basically, if you're a Chinese super elite, remember that hot mic moment that happened probably last September? It was Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un. They're watching a military parade, right? And they got caught on this CCTV hot mic. And basically, they're talking about continuous organ transplantation for immortality purposes.
Do you remember this? Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And it just sort of reveals that and I even remember years ago getting it's this anecdote was sent to me. It's an obituary of this very high level leader bragging. In the obituary, it's written that he liked to brag about how many transplants he had got, right? Or he liked to talk about how much. I mean, it was sort of said in glowing terms, right? And so basically that crystallized why I didn't really understand the meaning of that until that hot mic moment. If you're a Chinese super elite, unlimited organs available to you in perpetuity. Need a new heart? The heart might not last that long. Hey, you can have another one when you need it, right? It's a really extreme, and very twisted incentive structure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like Frankenstein's monster. You're just going to be covered in scars because you keep getting organs replaced.
Right.
But all of these super elites, regardless of the country, that's their goal, right? Whether it be transhumanism or this organ trafficking, that's what they're going for, is that immortality.
And so, I worry about this because, some people actually, some Chinese more, like I kind of think it was a really hot mic moment, but a number of Chinese who are going to, been in the system for a long time, they're very cynical about, the Chinese Communist Party making a mistake like a hot mic. Like, imagine the heads that would have rolled, right,
Sure.
if that really was a hot mic. So they actually think that was faked and it was actually kind of advertising, right? That a few people told me this and I was like, that's crazy. But, maybe.
Certainly could be.
Because if you want to benefit from our system, right, better be good.
Sure.
Right?
I interviewed another individual centered around the Communist Chinese Party earlier, actually yesterday. But I brought up something that I want to bring up with you as well. Not too distant, in the past here, we had Ronald Reagan identifying the Soviet Union as the evil empire.
Yes.
And we went to war against communism. And ultimately we won that fight.
Yes.
We've never, and not only have we never really gone after China, I used to work for the John Birch Society, so I'm pretty familiar with what's going on there. And we betrayed Czech and the nationalists and put our support behind the Communist Party. We as Americans just don't seem to want to go near the evilness of what is going on with the Communist Chinese. Why do you feel that is here in America? Why have we turned a blind eye to that?
How long you got? No,
It's a big question.
No, but there's multiple pieces to it, and I'll try to summarize as best I can because I know we don't have that much time. But back in the year 2000 or so, when I was working on China human rights issues, and I already knew that the Chinese Communist Party was killing people for exercising what we consider our First Amendment rights, right? Our fundamental protection from government, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically. So I knew that they were not liberalizing, but this was the mantra. I don't know if you remember, but this was like a 95.5 issue. Everybody believed, essentially. So the Kissinger Doctrine. Everyone believed that we're going to change China we're going to make them become like Taiwan or South Korea or one of these, Japan or something like that, right? Like through our benevolence, right? And of course, we're going to make a little bit on the side or a lot on the side, okay? But no, this was very, I felt like a little bit like I was screaming into the void. I wasn't screaming, but it was just people just didn't get it, and I was like, no, they're killing people for wanting to believe something different. Like that's literally what if they make people sign pieces of paper. If the person agrees to renounce their faith, they could go home. But if they don't, they'll torture them to death. Basically, that's crazy. That is not liberalizing, right? Yeah. That's part of the reason, right? I think part of it is because we wanted to believe it, and part of it was there's nefarious characters as well that are involved. So that's kind of how it started. And then I have a whole chapter in Kill to Order that talks about how they're expert at making both their own population and us complicit by developing these relationships, right? And I could sort of lay that out a we bit, but again, I know we don't have a ton of time right now, but I would recommend chapter 9, okay, in Kill to Order. Again, part of it is basically convincing. If I'm one of the people that's job is to kind of bamboozle the barbarians or woo the barbarians, as they call it, I would say, well, we're working together to try to change China, but there are these hardliners up there. Just don't rock the boat. Don't do anything that might make them unhappy. Otherwise, they're going to take control. But we're working together, right? That's just one example. Okay?
Placating them.
Yeah, exactly. So all this happened, and this happened with the U.S. government, very high-level relationships. After Tiananmen Square, infamously, we only found out much later, Scrowcroft's going to Beijing and saying, we're going to ride this out, guys, all that, right? But I think a lot of it had to do with money, because the CCP figured out that by co-opting the American elites, right, like by basically working together, making good money, it didn't matter that the rest of the country was being hollowed out, because people didn't fully even grasp it. They're like, hey, we're making money, we're contributing to the economy, right? And it's easy to, there's this famous Upton Sinclair quote that it's very hard to explain something to someone if their financial interest is connected to them not noticing it, right? I forget, that's not the exact quote, but it's very close.
Paraphrase.
It's a very close thing. So anyway, I think that's part of it. But that said, I do think in the last 10 years it's shifted. And you hear President Trump, for example, talking about how she is his best friend. She actually seems to say this about many of the dictators they're most sort of problematic for America, and with some exceptions. But I think that's part of his negotiation tactics, because his economic policy feels something very different. And frankly, part of the reason he was elected back in the day. I mean, to be fair, almost every president campaigned on protecting America from China, right? But I think Trump was really the first one to enact that. And, the first trade deal that was arranged between the U.S. and China, I think that was actually the first moment in which the Chinese were leveraged into a position they didn't want from over probably 30 years, because they would always say, yeah, we're doing win-win, but really they were just getting, I win twice.
Yeah.
Every time. So I think this has shifted. I think it's been a long haul. I think we've realized the situation with critical minerals. I think we're trying to figure out how to extricate ourselves. They've done a really powerful job of putting themselves deep into the global economy, kind of making themselves too big to fail, if you will. I would argue that it's better to have the pain now than the pain later, because the pain later is really bad pain.
I would absolutely agree.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, I think
you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, most of our medications, like 95% of our medications, are coming out of China. That's just one example right there.
And that's part of their industrial policy. That's part of their. It's not by accident. This was part of their national security strategy, in fact, right? To basically, because it's a very compelling argument to say that we built that. It's not a normal economy. It's a parasitic economy, mainly on the U.S., but also on the West in general.
Yeah.
So I kind of advocate for cutting off all those sources of revenue, because that's really the main thing. The regime has sort of hollowed out its own economy dramatically. It's really only an export piece now. And, I think it would be good for the Chinese to help figure things out for them among themselves internally, And I think they would be quite an economic powerhouse and would give us a run for our money. And I think that kind of competition would actually be very valuable to America, like to have a proper, one of the stereotypes of the
Competitive free
Chinese
market,
is that they work their butts off. And that's a true stereotype, actually. It's I know I work with a lot of free-minded Chinese. It's like that. So anyway, this is a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think we're at a moment where things can really change meaningfully. And it's a question of, do we want to keep funding a regime that does kill to order? And I would argue that's not a good idea. We should stop being complicit, and we are in many ways.
Yeah, I would agree. And so with this book, I want everybody in the audience to grab this book, Kill the Order. I want you to read it because I want you to get angry, because this book, I guarantee you, is going to make you angry. And anger can drive you to action. And that's what we need in these United States, is action. We need people to read your book, Kill the Order, and then go contact their representative and say, hey, we need to do something about this. And if there's an organic groundswell, grassroots movement, then perhaps we can bring about change and stop with this despicable organ harvesting that's going on in China.
Caleb, right on the money. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, yeah. Pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Hey, this is Caleb Collier with Church and State over at Freedom Fest. I'm joined by Steve Lance, executive producer for the film Unbroken. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, sir.
Caleb, thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So the film Unbroken, a movie about traditional Chinese dance, and they were persecuted horrifically by the Communist Chinese Party.
Yeah, the folks behind Shen Yun practice this spiritual discipline called Falun Dafa. And it was introduced in China in 1992. By 1998, over 100 million Chinese people started to practice this. It became sort of this phenomenon inside the country. And because of that, in communist China, it drew the attention of the authorities. So they condemned it, began to systematically persecute it, and put out a ton of propaganda to defame it. They labeled it as an evil cult. They said practitioners are crazy for practicing it, so on and so forth. And so a lot of folks from this community fled that persecution, moved to the United States, and have used various channels to sort of get the word out about persecution. And one of those is Shen Yun. You may have seen the billboards with the tagline, China before communism. And it's grown to sort of this global sensation where it's performs all around the world at the finest theaters in New York City, Washington, LA, Paris, London, you name it. And because of that, it's also drawn the ire of the Chinese Communist Party.
Of course it has. It's interesting. The more they persecute, the more it grows. But it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, China has a long history. Oh, I should say communist Chinese. The Communist Chinese Party has a long history of hating really any religion, because their intention is for you to worship the state.
That's 100% right. And that's why they see Falun Dafa and Shen Yun as the biggest threat.
This is Caleb Collier with Church and State. Are you tired of your device spying on you? Ladies and gentlemen, we live in 1984. Your phones, your tablets, your smart televisions, they all are spying on you. And this is why I heavily endorse Mark37.com. This is everything you need for your digital privacy. Phones, tablets, laptops, all of them are ghost protocoled. So that means that you are in charge of your own data. Just go to churchandstate.media, scroll over to shop, and hit mark37.com for all of your privacy needs. Make sure to use that promo code Church and State. And we are back, and thank you for staying with us. You're over at churchandstate.media, and we're going to go right back to the interview. But of course, I got to plug one of our awesome affiliates. And I'm thinking Liberty Cigars, Chris. I love cigars. I really do. My wife doesn't so much like them, but for me and for many men out there, we love a good cigar. We really do. There's nothing better than sitting around with a bunch of fellow men, smoking a cigar, maybe a glass of whiskey, and the greatest conversations arise. We're talking politics, we're talking religion, theology. Some guys are talking about sports. That's not me. But these cigars are some of the best on the market. And one of the things, too, that I really like as a history nerd, I tell you all the time, I've got my bachelor's in history, and it's amazing I'm not serving you coffee from Starbucks. Would I have to get my septum pierced if I did that?
I believe that is a requirement.
Like just a nice bull ring. Probably color my hair something weird, too.
Oh, definitely. And maybe shave half of it off. Or...
That's the look right there. You wonder if would like shaving half your beard off, would that ever come into popularity? Too far.
Possibly.
Possibly, yeah. Well,
you just got to shave a weird part of it off.
that's probably true. Obviously, I'm not doing that, but I do love history, and every single one of these cigars is a history lesson. They're all after our founding fathers, famous generals, presidents. These are great cigars by a Christian, by a patriot. So go check out Liberty Cigars and use that promo code Church and State. And speaking of support, obviously I don't want to work at Starbucks. I don't even like their stuff. It's not very good. Okay, I don't want to shave off half my head and dye the rest of it pink and get my septum pierced. But as a history major, that might be my only option if Church and State goes away. Oh, I think I just got like a shiver up my spine. I'm scaring myself.
It's like worse than the gulag.
I know. Ugh, I'm going to have nightmares today. Like, here's your order. I got to be snotty, too, if I'm working at Starbucks. Or like, do you know who I am? I work at Starbucks. I got my degree in history. Here's your croissant and your grande frappuccino. I don't want to do that, ladies and gentlemen. You don't want to see me do that. So hit the donate button for us and keep us alive on great networks. All right, with that, let's go ahead and go back to our incredible interview. I hope you're paying attention. I hope this show is rather shocking for a lot of you because there is legislation out there that can at least force this really important issue into the public eye. With that, let's go ahead and go back to the interview.
The Communist Chinese Party has a long history of hating really any religion because their intention is for you to worship the state.
That's 100% right. And that's why they see Falun Gong and Shenyun as the biggest threat. Because actually both of them sort of embody the spirit of a renaissance of many of those traditions. As you mentioned, during the Cultural Revolution, they went to such great lengths to destroy the traditional culture. They toppled Buddha statues and Taoist temples and made light of Confucianism and inverted all of those principles that Chinese people flourished in for thousands of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I wish more Americans knew the very tragic history of how the United States betrayed China, really. I mean, we had an opportunity to either support the communists or the nationals, with King or Czech. And we didn't. We picked the wrong side. And, ultimately that led to the establishment of Taiwan. But Americans owe an apology to the Chinese people and what they had to suffer through communism.
I agree. I mean, there's a lot of sort of these pockets of campaigns that things failed. I know that we were trying to help the Tibetans fend off the Chinese for a while and sort of, receded from that.
You used to see that on cars all the time, Free Tibet. You don't see that as much anymore.
You're right. And, a big thing about Shenyun is it's sort of the quintessential American story. When you think about our founding and the pilgrims that fled religious oppression inside of England and came here and then ultimately planted the seeds to have a constitution in the First Amendment, you have these Chinese dissidents fleeing religious oppression, coming here and utilizing, some of our greatest attributes. It's really a tremendous story. And the fact that it's now being attacked and leveraged by some of America's finest, or at one point, finest institutions, the New York Times, is really a sad.
Yeah, you brought that up before we were recording, and I'd love for you to share that with the audience. I don't encourage anyone to read the New York Times. I refer to it as the New York Slimes. But it's a publication that has a long history. David Rockefeller thanked the media for hiding the true intentions of these globalists. But this is no friend for anyone who pursues liberty, loves freedom. And they went after this group for 7 times reach today?
It's actually upwards of 10, 11, or 12, depending on how you look at the different articles that they've published. And it's really hard to wrap your head around how an American institution could get things so wrong. And I think for a lot of people, it's been sort of a staple generationally in their family, so they just can't, wrap their head around that fact. But as you mentioned, just in the New York Times short history, they've gotten things incredibly wrong. If you look at the Ukrainian genocide and Walter Duranty, the Pulitzer that he won for that time, basically carrying water for Stalin, it's been really recognized that was all inaccurate, and they did everything but pull the Pulitzer for whatever reason.
Yep.
And so that's one reference that you can look at, the New York Times themselves getting something wrong. When it comes to the issue and the persecution of Falun Gong, they've gotten it, wildly wrong from the beginning. And what we explore in this film is sort of the editorial process. And we really, the CCP kind of throws mud on them, and there's so much, and it's hard to trace back everything that they threw. So we put a few of those things together. And what you can see is a through line that everything that the New York Times is reporting, I use that with air quotes, on Shen Yun, everything that they're saying is a direct propaganda component that comes out of China and how they try to label Shen Yun. And, we don't get into this too much in the film, but I think it's interesting. Your viewers might find it interesting as well. One of the key journalists, I use air quotes again, her name is Nicole Holm. And her father is a professor of, originally from China. I think he was naturalized to the United States. But we were able to unearth and find that he has direct ties to the CCP's United Front work department. This is direct, this isn't speculation, directly tied to organizations under the United Front work department. And so whether or not this New York Times reporter, Nicole, is an agent of influence because of her obvious, close proximity to her father, or just simply carrying water for the CCP, it's something that everybody should be.
I would agree, and regardless, I mean, there's enough there for us to examine, to look at it and say what's really going on. And this United Front, I'm well aware of it. And it's infiltrated so many institutions in the United States, and as you said, it's got people from universities, from media, Hollywood, carrying the water for the Chinese Party or Communist Party. And as Americans, I just think that we need to look at that, and we should be on the side. We can put away religious differences, and we can put that aside and say, hey, this is a group that is pursuing freedom versus communism.
You're absolutely right. And if you were to go to a Shen Yun performance, the vast majority of people that attend are not Chinese. They're actually Americans from all different walks of life. And, the common sort of uplifting energy coming out of it is this was a presentation of universal values. There's certain common themes that sort of bind us all together.
Sure.
And, Shen Yun encapsulates.
Let me ask you a question in regards to communism. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Ronald Reagan labeled the Soviet Union an evil empire, and we did everything within our power to combat this. Got involved in proxy wars and things. They ultimately fell in good riddance, in my mind. Why do we not have that same mentality when it comes to the Communist Chinese Party?
That's a really excellent question. I ask myself that probably twice a week, to be honest. When I walk down, our office in Washington, D.C. is a trophy building right across from the Capitol. We share, the building with some of the most well-known multinational companies, well-known American companies. They're there to lobby. They're there to report. And when I walk down the hall and I see a newspaper called the China Daily, this is a state-run publication. And we're essentially, if you ask people in our intelligence community, we're in a Cold War with China right now, and on many fronts. And so could you imagine, to your point, during the actual Cold War, walking down a hall across from Congress with some of the most influential people in the world working there with a Russian publication? It's really the
same thing. Yeah,
it's the same thing. Yeah. And they are not just in the halls of our building, as you mentioned, through the United Front. They're in Hollywood, they're on Wall Street, they're on Capitol Hill. And this isn't fear mongering. This is fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think this film is a great way for Americans to look at this, watch this, and start to take action. Because that's really what we need to do as Americans. Is we've gotten so apathetic and really just kind of fat off of the freedoms that our founding fathers gave us, there's a big fight for freedom here, and it's not just in the United States. It should be worldwide. We should be. Well, while I'm definitely not one for getting involved in all these foreign entanglements and wars, we should encourage peaceful, freedom movements all across the world. And this is one happening right now in China.
You're absolutely right. It's something that we all need to be aware of and vigilant of. As you said, we're, the most generous and accepting country on the face of the earth. And people come here for good intentions. Shenyun would be a prime example. They flee communist China, they come here and they love everything that the country stands for. But there are people that don't, that come here, and they have different intentions. Communist propaganda is very powerful. It sticks. It takes a long time to deprogram from, and it's a real threat.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm in Washington State. I see the communist propaganda that has taken a hold and ruined cities like Seattle and Portland. I mean, it's everywhere where I'm at, so it's no different than where you're at as well. How do people go and watch the film?
Well, we'll give your viewers a special link to watch for free. Of course, you can watch it on Amazon. There's a small fee. But if you go to NTD, New Tang Dynasty, ntdfilms.com, you can watch it there for free.
Fantastic. Well, I encourage the audience to go and watch this film. I know I'll be checking it out, and I'm going to have you back on for a full 45 minutes when we're actually in studio. I'm looking forward to that conversation. But thanks for stopping by and letting us know what's going on.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's episode. I hope it was enlightening and honestly a little horrific for you. I hope it drove you to action, I guess is what I want to say. And if you're driven to action, do something about it. Meet with your representatives. Let them know that you do not want to support China and all that they do. Church and State is brought to you in part by Colonial Life Spokane Independent Agents, Finders Insurance, and Mark37.com. I'm Caleb Collier. I was born for a storm.
Welcome to the fire.
Hey, this is Caleb Collier with Church and State. I want to tell you about Patriot Pouch. Look, if you're one of these individuals that's interested in nicotine and potentially the health benefits from it, but you're concerned about some of the side effects, Patriot Pouch might be your answer. This is a company that uses nixidine instead of nicotine. It hits the same nicotine receptors in your brain, but without those side effects like elevated heart rate or elevated blood pressure. So if you want the health benefits of nicotine without nicotine, Patriot Pouch may be the company for you. I need you to go to patriotpouchusa.com. Use the promo code Church and State. You'll get a great nicotine replacement, and you'll be helping to support Church and State and everything that we do here. And remember, when you go to patriotpouchusa.com, not only are you supporting a Christian patriot business owner, but you're helping to support Church and State. Hey, this is Caleb Collier with the Church and State podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I want all of you to go to Galileo.com. You need to stay connected no matter what comes our way. Whether it's government intrusion or a meteor falling from the sky, Galileo has you connected. As a Marine veteran, I can tell you that communications is essential. Galileo has you connected. Whether it's worldwide coverage, uncensored content, or real-time alerts, Galileo is going to make sure that you're connected with your friends, family, and neighbors. Just head on over to churchandstate.media, scroll over to shop, and hit Galileo.com. Make sure to ask them for a free bivy stick, and make sure to use that promo code Church and State. This is Caleb Collier with churchandstate.media. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not sleeping on MyPillow, do you even patriot? I got to tell you, this is the most wonderful stuff from a man who's given it all for your freedoms. Whether it be the pillow, the sheets, or the slippers, I absolutely adore MyPillow. MyPillow has the greatest products around. I know when I want to shuffle around in my bathrobe and slippers and yell at the neighbors, of course I'm buying from MyPillow. I need you to head on over to churchandstate.media, scroll over to shop, because every single time that you purchase any of these products using the promo code Church and State, you ensure that we keep our message out on the air.
I thank everybody for your support in using promo code Church and State. You guys go to mypillow.com/Church and State too, and then you get your own little platform right there, everybody.